All right. You about ready?
I'm ready when you're ready. Oh, wait. I wasn't ready for that.
See, you're usually pretty quick about stuff.
I was putting my phone on airplane mode so we didn't get bothered.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us right here on another episode of City Views, bringing you our weekly segment, What's Cooking, with 65th District State Rep Michelle Cook. Brought to you by our sponsor, Toth Insurance Agency, located at 1151 East Main Street. Better protection, better value. Michelle.
Jacque.
It's been like 2 weeks.
I know. It's been a lengthy amount of time.
Well, but I mean, I don't know. When we get like this, it seems like 2 years have gone by.
I know. It is. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, my friend.
And we are so fond of you today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Making me blush.
You're at Democratic headquarters at the moment, making phone calls and rallying the troops, getting ready for another election year.
Yes, I am. That's it will be a daily event from open till close until election day. So trying to get out there and talk to voters, and during the pandemic it's a little bit more complicated than normal. So we're doing everything that we can.
Well, we had an interesting meeting today, this morning at the Government Relations, and we had an opportunity to discuss some of the agenda from the House session that just took place, and it's kind of it's a sticky situation, Michelle, because people are not out of the woods yet.
No,
and even though we're embarking upon phase 3 in the state of Connecticut, there's still, yes, today, there's still some tough issues that the citizens in your district are grappling with.
That's an absolute across the country. It's not unique here to Torrington or to Connecticut. And as you know, and we've discussed on this very show since May, nobody expected or planned for this pandemic. And we are really seeing the repercussions of the contagiousness of this virus and keeping people safe and healthy. And as you've heard me say all the time, a community that's healthy is a community that can heal. And if we are not honest about that and we are not socially respectful, then we're never going to get out of the woods. At the same time, as phase 3 started today, giving the ability for restaurants to open to 75%, obviously with the weather changing, that's vitally important for their livelihood. And we've seen in-house visiting now at nursing homes for family members that have not been able to happen since March. These are some of the little things. So that brings us back up to, over the 85% of businesses being open. We recognize that bars have not given the okay. And a lot of people are really conflicted with some of that. But, at the end of the day, if you're a bar that doesn't serve food and you're literally standing in a bar to drink or to socialize, we often forget to remain socially distant, and it's very difficult when you're consuming, anything to keep your mask up and stay far away. I'm hoping that we see a little bit more progress in that regard, and really that's I think one of the only things that are left unopened in any manner. But there's still some things, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that people have recovered or are recovering at the rate that we need them to be able to get out of the woods of which they're in. At the same time, we're still dealing with record numbers of unemployment for folks that have downsized. Some other folks have, decided not to open. Other folks are working from home, so they don't need the amount of staff that they do in person. So we're seeing the repercussions of all of this. And I'm just not sure that we're going to see 100% movement until we see a vaccination. And my understanding is that won't happen until sometime after the first of the year.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've also heard some reports that a vaccination isn't the necessarily cure-all.
That's true too.
really what we need to continue to focus on are the mitigating factors that we know that work, and employ those in a way that they're acceptable by the majority of our citizens. Um, that's just one thing I'm still having a little bit of difficulty with. I know uh, there's somewhat of a backlash against mask wearing, but uh, personally, I don't understand that backlash, because if people don't want to get sick,
Right.
how can you have a problem with that?
Well,
And
I think that there's a fear that the vaccination has been rushed through the process, when traditionally when you find a vaccination, it goes through a multi-year process. So there is that fear that even if we do have a vaccination come January, how many people are going to be comfortable taking it? And so as you were just discussing the mask protections, I think that we're still going to have to result in wearing those masks until we can find some type of a comfort. We know that there's, we see outbreaks in schools, we see outbreaks on universities and businesses. I go to bed every day praying that we see an improvement and that people are very conscious of what's going on and how we continue to work together to make it better. It just, as you sit and you wander through a store, you're always going to see those folks. I was on the phone with a woman today who worked at one of our local grocery stores who cannot wear a mask, but she wants to work. And her company says, well, regardless of your health condition, you have to wear a mask. And she can't. She physically cannot. She suffers from some lung, a lung disease and cannot wear a mask. So this woman is now out of work, not by her choice. So we're having repercussions like that too. And if everybody would wear their mask, and a woman like that was able to go to work and not be able to wear her mask, wouldn't that make it a lot better? And then that person could go to work safely.
yeah, I really I empathize with your position as a rep, representative your constituency of the residents in your district, and wanting the best for them, understanding the severity of this and the risk of this public health crisis, and having that politicized. Uh, that's just got to be a tough situation to be in.
Right. It is. And, I understand the situations of freedom and liberties. I understand the frustrations of people that are really dealing with underlying pre-existing conditions, that are struggling to be productive members of society, but then, dealing with the effects of the other folks of society that are pushing back against one or the other. It's very difficult to say that this woman is wrong, where she's trying to be healthy but she's also trying to work. She's just one of many, I'm sure. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about breathing issues, and that we have a virus that attacks your lungs, how do we help her? And what do we do for her? And how do we help many, many more like her? How do we protect our elderly? Or all those other folks that have underlying pre-existing conditions that are vulnerable to this virus that is so deadly, as we have seen, by the over 210,000 people that have died and the over 5.5 million people that have contracted it.
And on top of that, Michelle, as you mentioned earlier, the unemployment rate is not flattening out. Small businesses are hurting as well. And you have a situation where the state has had to take upon itself providing unemployment insurance in those situations. How was that handled in your last session in the House?
So we had already addressed a lot of that earlier on in the previous sessions. And because we were in such a good stable position, and we had an incredible $900+ million rainy day fund, we had not necessarily needed to tap into a lot of things. But when we go back into session come January, this is where experience and dedication comes into making some really tough decisions, because the next 2-year budget cycle is going to be a very difficult one And we're going to have to make some hard decisions to figure out how to get out of what's coming up later. If we were talking about giving unemployment for the traditional 28 weeks for the average amount of people, we were able to handle a lot of those things. And, and you have in those situations as well, traditionally you have businesses that offset some of the unemployment components. You don't have that now. Now we're dealing with a totally different, it's a totally different thing that we're faced with. So, we're continuously ensuring that insurance is covered. We just dropped the price and capped the price of insulin, and the products for, folks that have diabetes and use insulin products, to stay healthy. Nobody should make a choice between whether you get your medicine to live a healthy life or not be able to afford it. So we've done those things in the meantime, but we are extending the unemployment and waiving some of those requirements to show that you're going out to work, because we don't want you to necessarily go out to find a job right now. That kind of defeats the purpose unless you can interview, online or via Zoom or however over the phone. And a lot of people aren't hiring. And so recognizing that those 4 or 5 contacts a week that would traditionally be required under unemployment is kind of waived at this point. There's a lot more than just the unemployment that we're trying to deal with. We want to ensure that telehealth for residents that can't get to the doctor, or it's not safe for them to go to the doctor, that can stay home and visit their doctor like we are talking right now. And then the doctor doesn't lose out on that office visit. They can now be reimbursed for that. We've extended that through March. And then that gives us the opportunity when we go back to our legislative session in January to readdress that and see if we can make that permanent. I think it's vitally important that we do that. A lot of doctors' offices are small businesses as well. Not everybody's a part of a large conglomerate or a big practice. And so we have to protect all folks. And, at the end of the day, it's really about working together and being patient to try to get through this.
Well, the patience aspect of it, a lot of people, let's just say, patience isn't always
a virtue,
which I totally understand. But at the same time, we have to be responsible and make good decisions for not only ourselves, but our community. And I'm sure that that has to weigh heavily on you going forward, especially in an election season, in terms of bringing the community together to understand the very, very challenging unintended consequences from this virus.
That's true. You have a very opinionated and fiery election upon us from the national level, and it gets ugly, and it gets to a point where people aren't talking to people, and I think that we've lost that ability to be dignified and respectful. Not everybody. Please, I'm not saying that everybody. I've watched 2 debates now, and I made a post last night after the debate, the vice presidential debate. And it wasn't by any means to be disrespectful to anybody, but it was really about saying that we need to show respect. And
right.
If I don't care what party you're from, I don't care what gender you are, that's not relevant to this conversation. This is about respect. And if you are trying to get your point across in a manner of truth and honesty and dignity, people are watching. I don't care if you're running for president, vice president, mayor, or student government. It's really about showing dignity and respect. And so my joke about, I wish we had a mute button. It wasn't about shutting one person off or the other, or about violating somebody's constitutional rights or freedom of speech. It was about the fact that people had agreed to 2 minutes and not interrupt those 2 minutes. We expect that in our own our civility in our lifetime. And I would hope that we all can lead by example and recognize that we must do better, because we have generations that are growing that need to learn from us, and they need to learn the right way.
And that brings me to my next point, Michelle, because your opponent in this year's election is a young gentleman who who is known in Torrington for his public service. And it's not going to be easy, especially for the younger generation coming up, to make those changes that are going to be vital for them going forward in terms of having that civil discourse for political debate. With that age difference in there, and you have a good relationship, with Chris, because you guys work together on the food drives and whatnot. But what do you want to see our up and coming generation do in terms of creating a more robust environment for political debate?
I think that there's a true element that this very partisan politic needs to take a step back. If we look at our founding fathers and partisan politics has really become so stretched and tense, to where if you're from the other party, you don't talk to somebody, you don't like any of their ideas. Like all of those things. Part of the success that, and me, Jacque, I am not one to talk about myself, but I think that part of my success is being able to work across the aisle in multi-facets and realize that you need to listen, that none of us know it all, and that we must find a way to get common ground for the greater good. And it can't just be because your party says that you must do. And those are things that I think that we have often lost as the generations have gone. And I'm not saying it's just the younger generation that sees some of that, quite frankly. I know folks that are much older than I that are still very partisan. Look, we see it in DC. I'm fortunate here at the State House that I have colleagues that I work with very closely on both sides of the aisle. If I didn't, I would have never been able to pass that firefighter cancer bill that had been attempted so many years prior to me trying to get it done and then succeeding to get it done. It's really about what we can do together, because at the end of the day, when you're elected, regardless of who elects you, you're supposed to be representing the people, not just the party of which is behind your name. And I would hope that, whenever and whoever follows in my footsteps or is in any other elected position, that they take that and they say, you want to know what? It's not about party, it's about the person. And, I don't knock anybody's community service. By no means. I think that we are better people because we have people that will give of community time. I've been working those food drives since May. And yesterday, you're correct. Yesterday, Chris and I did work the food drive together. There was no butting heads and arguments. There's a line of people that are looking to get food, and you need to work with the people that are there. And at that food drive, you're not asking what party you're with. You're not asking, how much money you make, where do you live? We don't care about any of that. You need to do those things. I don't ask those questions. The weeks and months that I've been volunteering on this food drive and giving back to the community and visiting people and dropping off food to their house, I'm not asking them what their party is. I don't care. We have to get along. We live in a very small town. And if we can't figure that out, we're not going to make a better community.
Well, speaking of making a better community, there's a big referendum coming up on this this ballot, on this election, concerning the building of a new high school. It's a pretty controversial issue right now. especially in the light that, well, at least there was that perception that we had declining enrollment. However, the influx of residents coming in from New York might be tilting those numbers in the other direction. But a lot of people feel like their taxes are already too high. And if they don't have any kids in the Torrington School District, why should they be, handed the responsibility of paying for their education? Um, Speak to that and talk to our listeners about the importance of this high school being built and what it'll bring to the community.
I would offer that I've had 4 children go through the school. I don't have any children in the school system now, and I'm a huge proponent of this project. I think it's vitally important for the revitalization of our community. I think that as we build a new modern facility and we offer more than more than what we can offer right now in the building that in theory is so bad, that it needs to be rebuilt. You cannot remodel this facility in a manner that is fiscally responsible. You need to rebuild this facility. We need to upgrade it. We need to modernize it. We need to be able to attract more people to come into our community. I mean, we've been very blessed that we have seen an influx of people moving into into Torrington. And that's vitally important. And that's great for our tax base. We also need to work on bringing businesses to our town. That would be even better for our tax base. But at the same time, if you don't have a top-notch educational system, and I don't mean just the people that are inside the building, but I mean the things that attract students. This is why I built the track and field, going on 5 or so years ago. That was part of the reason why, because we did not have a field that was even playable. And so you build it kind of like the field of dreams. You build it and they come. And if we look at the school, that high school was built in the early 1960s. It had a minor renovation, and I mean minor renovation in the late 90s. We need fiber technology, whiteboards, connectivity. You need state-of-the-art equipment. If you saw the weight room that is there, and we want our athletes to be safe, we need to give them more. If we want to be able to compete with the schools in the valley, we need to give them more. We've heard nothing but, we need a pool. This could be possible. There's so many things, and it would be more energy efficient. It would be, the whole thing in a nutshell would be great. But you tipped on something that I think is even more important. You tipped on the folks that don't have students in the schools. I offer you this. There's always been a time when we were paying taxes that we did not have children in a school. But that is part of the Constitution of the United States. Every child is entitled to a free and public education. I get that our mill rate is high. I live here. We as a state, we don't set the mill rate. That's set at the local level. I've ensured over the last 12 years that we've had no educational cuts, and that I've done everything in my power to give more money back in grants and funding. We can't lose kids because we can't compete with other schools in different towns. And if we want to look at a community as a whole, what greater thing that we could say to our youth is that we support your education and we want to make it better for you. And we get a reimbursement from the state. So this is not all falling on the taxpayers. I think that there's a lot of misinformation that's being floated out there. And if people need to know about factual information, I would say call Mario Longabuco. He has been, he knows this stuff inside and out. Get the facts. Don't believe what you hear on social media and all of those things. Ask the questions and get the information. Because at the end of the day, the more people we get to move into town, the bigger our community is. Then that's more money that we get from the state and the federal government. That's why the census was so vitally important. Everybody fills out the census. That's $2,900, that's $29,000 per person for 10 years. That's important money that we must get back from the feds. But that also helps us get money back from the state. But how do you tell kids we don't believe in them or their education when you put them in a building that definitely needs to be rebuilt? Not remodeled, rebuilt. And it needs to be energy efficient. It needs to run in that state of the art way. Because at the end of the day, we can have great teachers and you can put them in a structure, but there's a lot more that comes with that to make our students competitive for the next steps in their life. They deserve that, and we should give them that.
I agree wholeheartedly. Another aspect of that, though, that I think will suit the community well is the actual design of the high school and giving that campus atmosphere, which will complement, for example, the expansion of 5 Points Gallery to the former UConn Torrington branch.
Yep.
And with the launch pad downtown associated with 5 Points, the educational aspect of community building will be implemented into the design of the high school, which I think just puts Torrington in a much more attractive place.
I couldn't agree more. 5 Points has been, they've been instrumental in being an important component to downtown and improving on the arts and putting us on the map in a way where 5 Points we know is booked out 3 to 5 years, depending on what studio that you're talking about and what type of display that we're talking about. But with the purchase of the UConn property that is now the 5 Points Art Campus, and the vision that we have from Judy and her staff to put this on an international school, an art school, and an artist path and all of these things, that is just another stepping stone for a great partnership for our schools. If anybody is viewing, hasn't been to the high school as of lately, we have great artists, incredible talent. We don't have the type of studios that they need to grow in that talent. But to have those partnerships, to be able to go right up the street and to bridge some of those gaps and bring international artists to teach classes, just those partnerships, what an amazing opportunity. I mean, right now you have local folks that are doing great things. You have Luke Pepper, who is there now at the high school teaching photography class. He's an incredible talent. But for him to be able to teach photography with our students, and then to be able to work with 5 Points and see what those visionaries are, and to bridge all of those things together and to make it one fluid transition from one step to another. Isn't that what we want? We have an incredible campus in Winstead, the Northwest Connecticut Community College, and you have the I'm drawing a blank on the artist project, the mural project.
Commuter project.
Right. What an incredible opportunity for international artists and local artists to be a part of that project. That has put us on the map. The Northwest Corner can be a vital part, even more so, in our educational components. Our school has been rated the top 100 music districts for the last 19 years. I could be 20, but I believe we're at that 1920 mark. COVID's kind of got me a little bit different on our numbers, but Mr. S and all of the music teachers across the district, they do incredible things. They have outgrown the band room. We need to give them a place to perform inside as well as outside. And so what an incredible opportunity to do that as well. And then to be able to do, different types of recitals and other things up at the 5 Points campus where they're keeping the stage and the theater up there. Jacque, this falls right back into your wheelhouse, right? The music falls over into the arts and culture component to this. How incredible is that as well? This is just a building and stepping stone, I think, for our community. You talk about the high school, we talk about education, we talk